Hello, everyone, and welcome to the new collaboration channel, Grumpy Old Gentleman on Film. And I am one of the Grumpy Gentlemen. My name is Mike, also known as Gray 1951, which is the name of my personal channel. We are going to do a film every month in sort of a fashion of a book club, where instead of reviewing books, we're going to talk about the same film. Five of my friends and I, we're going to each go in turn, choosing a film for all of us to talk about. And this time, my friend Jay Harvey, Blu-ray Collector 1971, has chosen for us Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, one of the biggest films of 1969 and considered by most people to be a classic of the Western genre. Now, okay, in 1969, I was 18 years old. This is one of the biggest films of my young life, and I didn't see it. I don't know why. I can't remember why I didn't go to see it. I guess I just got busy or something. But I finally got around to seeing it maybe about a year and a half ago when I found this deluxe 2-disc edition, which is really nice, has a lot of extra features. And so I watched it again last night in preparation with this video. So I like the movie very much, although when I saw it the first time, I found myself wondering, why is this considered to be such a classic? There really isn't that much to it. There's not that much to the story. And I enjoyed it a little bit more last night when I watched it again. I guess I watched it with, I don't know, more critical eyes or something. But it's based on real characters. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid were bank robbers and train robbers in the Old West. Sundance Kid was well known as one of the greatest gunmen of the time. The character played by, let's see, now those two characters, of course, played by Paul Newman and Robert Redford. And the third lead actor, the leading actress in the film, is Catherine Ross, who also plays a real-life character named Etta Place, who was involved with these men and traveled with them. And anyway, so the story itself is really kind of simple. I think the movie is a triumph of style and visuals and star power over actual story and substance. And I think there are two very important things to remember about, or to consider about, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, the movie. First of all, it was looked upon as being a very countercultural story in a period where it was very important for filmmakers to try and connect with the youth culture, the counterculture of the time, which was ascendant. I mean, all of us baby boomer types were growing up and we were getting ready to take over the universe, which we eventually did. And now we are the establishment. But at the time, these two characters, Butch and Sundance, were looked upon as being young guys who were part of the counterculture, and they were fighting against the establishment. Not really fighting so much, but they were doing something anti-establishment. If you were robbing the banks, which is definitely the establishment, I guess was looked upon as being a very cool thing. Plus, they were likable guys who had a real sense of humor and the great dialogue between the two of them, and a lot of chemistry. A lot of chemistry. It was very much a buddy film, and one of the first of its kind. And the second thing to consider is that, the story itself is not the most important thing. As I said, it was the star power between these two actors. And I look upon Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid as being sort of the Western version of The Big Sleep, which of course was a classic film from the year 1946, which starred Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall. And the story in that one was, it wasn't a simple story. It was very convoluted, actually. And it was a story that almost nobody could figure out, including the people who wrote it. They couldn't figure out exactly what happened to each one of these characters or who killed this guy. We're not sure. It didn't matter. It was beautiful to look at. It had incredible chemistry between the two actors. And the film was primarily made as a promotional vehicle for Bogart and Bacall as a cinematic team, and it worked beautifully. The same thing happened with Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, and it's interesting also that they used modern pop music to include in the film to give it a more contemporary feeling, even though it was about the Old West. You had music by Burt Bacharach and Hal David. They wrote this little pop tune called Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head. performed by B.J. Thomas. And it had nothing to do with the story, really. And it was inserted into a scene where it was just Paul Newman and Catherine Ross playing around on a bicycle, doing a lot of improvisational stuff. And then it ended up with Paul Newman doing tricks on the bicycle, making Catherine Ross laugh. And it had nothing to do with the story. There were no raindrops involved anywhere. But it had everything to do with establishing the feeling of these characters and the life they were living with each other, and the fact that they were so appealing to the audiences who watched them and who listened to the dialogue between them. And I think that's the most important thing. I really enjoyed this film, and it's certainly worth looking at, not only because it's a lot of fun to watch, but because it's very much a product of its time, and it can tell you a lot about the way Hollywood was changing. This was 1969. Hollywood, between, let's say, 1967 and on up into the early 1970s, was becoming a completely different place and appealing to a different audience. And this is a great example. Lots of great interviews and comment. I listened to a little bit of the commentaries. Not all of it, but I did listen to almost all of the extra features, the interviews, comments in later years by the three lead actors, and I love the way the film opens up. It opens up with sort of a black and white sepia-toned visual. It's black and white with sort of a brownish look to it, making it look like an old silent film, which they were showing on the screen as the opening credits played. An old silent film that they made in this contemporary time, but it looked like it could have been an old silent film. And they were showing the story of Butch and Sundance. And that, as the movie opened up to the actual characters, beginning with Paul Newman scoping out a bank that they were considering robbing, it was keeping that same sepia tone. And then it moved into a card game featuring the introduction of Robert Redford as Sundance. And it kept that sepia tone all through that very long scene. And as the two men were riding off into the countryside, all of a sudden the color started seeping in. They took away the sepia and slowly brought in color. It was beautiful, beautiful to look at. Now, Robert Redford was not a big star at this time. It's kind of hard to believe now, but it was this film that made him a major star in Hollywood. Paul Newman was already one of the biggest stars in the world, and Robert Redford was not the first choice to play Sundance. Steve McQueen was considered. Apparently, he and Paul Newman couldn't agree on billing, so that was a big conflict between the two of them. And Warren Beatty was suggested. Even Jack Lemmon was named at one point to maybe play the Paul Newman part. A lot of different casting options were thrown around, but they decided on Robert Redford, and it made his career. He said in one of the interviews that the change in his life before and after Butch and Sundance, he said that he could no longer live the life that he had lived before. But he wasn't complaining, because it certainly did make him a big star in Hollywood. I think the film is very good and very sort of fast-moving and exciting in the first half. And then when the three characters leave the United States and go to Bolivia to escape justice and also to continue their bank robbing in another country, I think the film slows down quite a bit. And the second part is not nearly as interesting as the first. And of course, we know it's predicted within the story in the film that they are going to eventually be caught and killed. So there's really no place for the story to go except to see them be killed. And that happens at the end. It happens very abruptly, quite frankly. And I think the story, in a way, is kind of a letdown. But it doesn't take away from the enjoyment of watching these two characters, actually three characters, relating to each other and the chemistry between all three of them. So that's all I want to say about Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Let me know what you think about this film. Comments are always welcome on any of my videos. And be sure to watch the other grumpy old gentlemen. I don't know how grumpy they're going to be when they do these videos, but I guess we'll find out. And watch their videos. And thanks for joining me. Take care.